So, welcome, brother, to the Defiant Spirit podcast.
Thank you so much.
So excited to have my friend here, Stephen Brandwayn. Stephen, as you'll get to know, is one of the most interesting dudes I have ever met. So, how about that as an introduction?
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that intro.
You were just on my son's podcast, Shadows and Shells, or Shells and Shadows. I can't remember which, but it's a good podcast, and I watched it. And I had already thought about having you on prior to watching it, but that just sealed the deal, man. So I don't want you to have to reiterate everything, but I did like how he said, Yuda said, give me the 30,000 foot view of who is Stephen Brandwain. So why don't you just kind of recap that for us?
Well, it will always be a different version every day.
You're a different man.
I
A
am a
month
different
later.
man. Yeah, I am a resilient, adaptable, beautiful human being. I encapsulate my human experience the best I can, and I'm all about vibrating at my own natural, authentic frequency. I was born and raised in Colombia, lived in the US and other countries, and now I live in Denver, practicing my coaching and being of service, helping people reconnect with their true authentic self, get unstuck, and really reclaim their fire.
And I know for a fact with that description, you're an Enneagram 7, man. That's a 7, if there ever was one, the enthusiast, right? The high vibrations. So true to form. Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I sent you a list of potential talking topics. You and I, how long has it been? 6, 9 months we met,
Oh,
something like that. You just jumped all in. You jumped in the deep end. You said, I'm in, whatever that means, let's go. And so I've gotten to know you both as a person. I've gotten to know some of the work you're doing. I know you've joined, and not only have you joined Man Uprising, but true to form, you're just, you're taking it by storm. You're leading the group. So I don't know. Maybe we start there because I have seen you as a force in the Man Uprising community that's growing, and just people around you right away say, I want more of that, whatever that is. So maybe let's jump off there. What is that energy? Where does that come from? Because that's unique.
one thing you said one time, which I really valued a lot, it's like, to you, it's not transactional.
Mhm.
It's about meaning, it's about purpose. And that resonated with me because I think that's been the way I live my life. There has to be more to it. What's the purpose behind it? What's the objective here? And when we met and you told me about Man Uprising, what it's about, I have a lot of friends and family and, YPO, NEO, and other different type of programs, but just a peer group where, for men 40 plus where they can just come and be vulnerable. I'm
Mhm.
like, hell yeah, that's amazing. That's super powerful.
Hmm.
So that just caught my attention and just kind of engaging with that. I was skeptical at first because I had never been in a peer group. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, it sounds cool. It sounds good, but let's give it a shot. And it's exceeded any and all expectations by far. It's very powerful.
So I imagine growing up in, I mean, I know you've lived all over, but you grew up in Bogota,
Yep.
right? And I imagine this is a far cry from Bogota, a bunch of men sitting around in a group being vulnerable, right? What's that like? Compare and contrast those two worlds.
uh, I would say not just to Bogota, to my
Mm,
life in general.
mm,
Jewish, Sephardic, Colombian, Latino, etc., um, and the world in general. I
mhm,
really grew up in a Western society type of culture where man being vulnerable was really kind of not a thing.
mm,
And I think it's still not much of a thing. Yet, I think we are growing as a society in general towards that place that human experience, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of anything, has light and has shadow, and just allowing for a place where you can really come and share that experience. Amazing. Bogota, yeah, very,
It's a very
male,
machismo
very
culture.
machista, very male dominant.
Mhm,
Um, and part of the reasons that I enjoy Denver and Colorado so much is that kind of more progressive mindset
mhm,
where it allows for men and just humans to have that human experience.
Hmm.
And I think it's important, to point that out for the world, for worldwide. I think it's important for anyone to be able to feel unsafe and dark and embrace that part of who we are.
It's one of the things I've come to love about you is, you represent that masculinity that's still strong, right? Because sometimes you got to choose. Either I'm gonna be the Colombia, Bogota version of myself, even me. Mine is more like I think of Israel and that tough side, or I'm gonna be soft and like there's this space in the middle, right? That is a strong masculine that's open and that's vulnerable, and you've embodied that. I see that in the way you've led your peer group, talked to the guys in your group, right? And it's like you have to have that strong sort of structure, keep them moving forward, keep them on task, but also that vulnerability, that openness. So that doesn't go lost on me or others.
Well, thank you for acknowledging that. I think it's lenses and perspective and masks,
Hmm.
masks in the right, connotation of mask. We're always wearing. If you're alive, you're wearing a mask.
So true.
At any given moment, you're wearing a mask.
Hmm.
And there's a mask of leader. There's a mask of vulnerable. There's different moments where they all come to be um, part of who we are. But embracing them is, I think, super important. Allowing yourself to be complete
Hmm.
as a whole. That's awesome.
So you said you didn't grow up like this. Did you have male role models who taught you how to talk like this, to think like this, to approach life like this?
Uh, I think everyone along the way
Yeah.
was a role model, not just the male role models. My dad, I have an older brother, I have my mom, I have an older sister. And then, just anyone along the way that just crosses your path and has an impact. For some reason, people and relationships, they'll have an impact. And it could be very random, or even a stranger that
Hmm.
said the right thing at the right time. But if
Hmm.
you're connected to synchronicity, to the parallels of life, you will always be getting the right message at the right time.
Do you feel like you had though these men and women who modeled this for you, this life that you're now living, this open-hearted, non-transactional,
For sure.
intimacy? You had those people around you.
For sure. I mean, I think everyone absolutely does.
I don't know. I talked to a lot of
Really?
guys who, a couple guys in my peer group who said that they are here in spite of what they witnessed and
Well,
experienced, not because of it.
well,
But
I guess
that wasn't your journey.
it was not my journey.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I guess that's a little bit of personal style
Hmm.
and my own frequency and my vibration. Being open to that, I've always been very um, fond of connecting with creation,
Hmm.
be it other human beings, nature, life, God. I think that makes life much more interesting.
I imagine you've been a seeker all your life. You're certainly a seeker now. Is that true? You've always been sort of seeking this quest, this calling, this God thing?
Absolutely, yes. But over the past few years, it became much more clear.
Hmm.
That seeking became a part of me that I couldn't just kind of have as a side thing that was happening during my life. It became top priority. That seeker, that self exploration, that meaning to life. That I'm not just here just because. I don't think anyone is here just because. I don't think anything is happening just because. So finding that meaning, that purpose, that reason for being,
Hmm.
to me, is a must. It's a non-negotiable.
So what's happened over, you said, the past few years? I think I listened in the podcast with Yuta. Um, COVID was a shift in the way you're approaching your spirituality.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
Well, I always kind of had this calling, this part of me inside of me that I was never able to really stop and entertain and
Hmm.
nurture.
Hmm.
And when COVID hit, it was a perfect opportunity for me to say, okay, what is that calling, that messaging that I'm getting from inside of me that's saying, hey, stop, look within, pay attention. And when I did, it was beautiful.
Hmm.
It was magical. It was explosive. It was hard and dark and all of that, but at the same time, it was just like, okay, it makes sense.
So COVID was a
It was
shift.
COVID and everything that was happening in my life. So I had my business, I had a startup, a scale up for technology and logistics, and I was working all in on that, and everything was going great. And
Mhm.
then when COVID happened, it went, belly up, and
Hmm.
we went from growth mode to survival mode, and everything at home with my wife, with my daughters, homeschooling, staying at home, um, all of that happening at the same time just opened the opportunity to question.
So Enneagram 7 bullshit aside, which is the good stuff. I know how you guys are wired, man. I wish I had some of that. Um, Tell me about the darker side of that period of time, because I imagine with great light came great darkness too.
Absolutely. It was very dark. So we all have high frequency vibrations and low frequency vibrations.
Mhm.
And I was just hijacked by my low frequency vibrations:
Mm.
guilt, shame, doubt, fear, anxiety, stress. But I couldn't snap out of that. It was all the time. It was really overpowering and horrible. It's frustrating, and I you can't live life all the time like that. I
Mhm.
get it. There's ups and downs. And there's moments where you have to, live through the shadows to
Mhm.
get to the light.
Mhm.
That's how we learn. That's how we grow. And that's awesome. But when we are hijacked in that low frequency vibration, and that becomes kind of a standard,
Mhm.
it's really hard. Um,
Was that the first time in your life you were in that place?
yeah. I mean, I've been in dark moments for sure, but it's been up and downs.
Mhm.
But, well, no, there have been dark moments for sure. But that one really kind of shook me. I think it was also a stage and maturity, or just kind of natural stages of, my human experience, where I had the will, the courage
Mhm.
to entertain and nurture my dark side. It's
Mhm.
like, wait, why avoid my shadows? What is it about, fear and doubt and all of these things that I prefer to avoid, and
Mhm.
let's ignore them? But ignoring and not entertaining and not nurturing your shadows, well, you have to deal with them some way. So I
Mhm.
was drinking a lot, right? And numbing myself. That's not the way to solve them. It's to solve your shadows, it's like
Mhm.
become friends with them. It's like entertain them, looking them in the eye and say, okay, what's up? Why am I so ashamed?
Mhm.
What's that shame? Where is it coming from? Why am I so afraid? Or why am I so stressed out? Like, why am I giving this dark side so much power over me? And it's a choice. And that's when the beauty comes in.
You know, I always say I can't work with guys who are that Enneagram 7 energy until they've either a parent has died, or their business goes under, or a friend dies. I mean, something monumentally tragic has to happen, because otherwise they just, what I call, do the void dance, avoidance, a void dance, a dance around the void. And then they just have to fall into the void. And that's their birth or their rebirth. I've seen it with a lot of guys who have that similar energy, and I'm hearing it with you too, that there's a rebirth that happens in that darkness. That's pretty powerful and impressive that you stood within the darkness and you didn't run from it.
It was the only way out. The only way out was in.
Hmm.
I had to dive within to come outside, like really, and just kind of, all right, this is all part of me, and I love it. You know, my failures, my successes, my challenges, it's all part of who I am.
Hmm.
But if I don't embrace that darkness, if I can only entertain my light, then it's not complete. So yeah, it was a really dark time, hard, but I just dove within. I had to do it that way.
So let me ask you the question Viktor Frankl would ask his patients. You're not my patient, you're my friend. But he would ask them on their first visit, the first question, and it wouldn't pass muster today, probably get you sued. You'd have to, provide a lot of trigger warnings and create a safe space. So here we go. So during that dark time, why didn't you kill yourself?
Hope, lover of life. I love life. I think
Even in the
life,
darkness.
absolutely. To me, uh, before I kill myself, I'll just go and, be a fisherman on an island and just enjoy that life. There's always that option. In the back of my head is like, okay, I can quit on this life and on the life that I have picked for myself and my relationships, my spouse, my kids, and just, if I'm going to surrender and quit on all that before I take my life, I'm just going to go spend it on a beach and just be a fisherman.
Just go experience something,
Absolutely.
anything.
But life is just way too amazing. The fact that I am here is a miracle. The fact that anyone is here is a miracle. The fact that creation happens is to me mind blowing. And it's a gift to be here on this earth right now in this human experience. It's a gift.
Hmm.
And just throwing it all away because it's hard, that's incoherent. That's ungrateful. It's like, no, okay, wait. Everything is a choice.
Yeah.
The only thing you have to do in life is die. That's the only thing you have to do. Be born and die, but you're already here. So you have one thing you have to do.
So why
Die.
so why hasten it? Why speed it up, right? You're gonna die anyways.
Right. We're all dying. It's just a matter of time. All you have to do, all you have to do to die is be alive.
Hmm.
But we're here. It's gonna happen. Might as well make it count and embrace it.
So you would say that was your dark night of the soul period of time.
Yeah.
You rebuilt your life out of that. Tell me about what that looks like. The rebuilt. I usually think of it as the return to Shuva and Kabbalah, as opposed to rebuild. I should use my language more precisely because it's a returning to, I think, who we are. And the other was a version of me. This is the true me kind of thing. Tell me, A, does that resonate? And B, tell me about the returning
Absolutely.
process.
Well, during that process, that dark night of my journey,
Hmm.
what I realized soon into this process is that I was super incoherent and dishonest with my true self.
Hmm.
My external self and my true self, I talked about this in Yuda's podcast. I had nurtured and entertained my external self fully. It was spot on. Outside, towards the world, it was perfect. My life, my work, my relationships, everything.
The mask
The,
that you
the
wore.
external mask. It was awesome. It was spot on. But I had really forgotten about my true self.
Hmm.
Like it had been years since I actually, and I wasn't even aware of it. I'm like, yeah, I'm in contact with myself. I know who I am. But when I sat down and really gave it thought, I'm like, wait, who am I?
Hmm.
So that who am I really couldn't give an answer without saying a role. Oh, I am a husband. I am a father. I am a business. But it was all roles.
Right. That's what I do.
This is what I do. But in essence, who am I? I was just lost in that question. So I just started by questioning everything. So I said, I'm going to question everything, everything that I know, everything that I've been taught since I was born. I'm going to question it. God, relationships, society, everything, just one at a time.
Hmm.
And through that work, I started to kind of peel off layers and layers and layers. And then, just kind of as I peeled layers, my light that was way down there started to kind of surface back up. And I'm like, okay, there it is. And I see it more closely, and it was flourishing. It was, blossoming. And it was, it's like as I reconnected with myself, it's beautiful. It's like a flower or anything that has a creation. You can't force a flower to be a beautiful flower fast. You have to nurture it and care for it and give it love and embrace it and ask it questions and make it feel comfortable and soil it and water it and give it sun. And when it's ready, it'll blossom into its best, awesome self.
Hmm.
So I was just kind of doing that process.
And in East darkness, those seeds are not born in light; they're born in darkness, right?
Yes,
I'm just
absolutely.
continuing your metaphor. So coming back to you're letting go, you're shedding layers, you're letting go of the masks. I imagine there's a lot of things you didn't let go of that you just returned to, you held on to. Like what are some of those things? I mean, you're still married.
I mean, habits, behaviors, patterns, they're hard to break.
Hmm.
So just kind of understanding in that kind of spectrum, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your identity. Your identity is based on what you say and what you do, or what you don't say or what you don't do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's triggered by emotions. And emotions you can't control. They come and they go as naturally as it can. But trying to control an action or a word based on an emotion is super hard.
Mhm.
But where do emotions, come from? From a belief system. And that belief system is, the framework of that belief system is your reality mindset. So between that reality mindset and your belief system, you have behaviors and thoughts and patterns. Um, so I like to question that as I go back to my reality mindset. I can much more easily work on my reality mindset than trying to change patterns and behaviors because they're much more ingrained in the brain. Um, what do I constantly fall back to? I don't know. I had never been asked that question. I'd never thought about it in that way. Um,
Like what is immutable? What is Stephen Brandwayn that was, is, and will be? I mean, you don't have to answer it. It's just like as I'm sifting through layers here, I can sense that there's a piece of you that looks exactly like you did, and there's this glow, this energy. I imagine if I met the 5-year-old, in addition to great fucking hair, he would have, which I'm
okay,
deeply
so
jealous
that
of.
that's easier. What darkness has remained? I mean, I'm sure a lot, but what light has remained? All of it.
Were you like
On
this
the
as a kid? I
contrary,
mean, do you remember
yeah,
being this vibrant
yeah, a lot
energy?
of energy, a lot of love, compassion, empathy,
Mm.
connection, creativity. Um, all of that is shining brighter as I do the work.
So maybe this is a segue into plant medicine because I just did my first plant medicine journey a week
Congratulations.
ago today. It was a 2, 3 day journey. It was led by somebody you know from Uprising, Phil,
Great
and
man.
great man, just great journey he took us on. We did MDMA slowly over time. Then he introduced psilocybin, and that was a whole other thing. And then I culminated it with what's the synthetic version of Bufo?
5
Five,
MEO.
5-MeO. Yeah. So that was the culmination for me.
Wow.
And, I dabbled with, I wouldn't call it plant medicine. I would call it, like psychedelics back in the day, as anything but a medicine. It was another escape. That's not what this was. I did it with my peer group. So there were 5 of us. And I saw each guy going on a different journey, but in a similar journey in that it was a return to who he is, right? That was my experience. Is I got to shed layers of who I'm not or what I'm not and just return back to that sort of core essence. I don't know, is that your I guess I'd like to hear more about your journey with plant medicine for anybody listening. They don't know. I mean, you're a guide in
Yeah.
this space. It's
Yeah.
what you do partially for a living.
Right.
So I'm really interested to talk about everything that's led up in our conversation to this, who we are, who we're not, and the role of plant medicine on this journey.
Wow. How did it go?
Fucking awesome.
Yeah. Good
It
for
was
you, man.
amazing. I had a lot of control issues, all human beings do, but that's my Enneagram 8 energy. It's right. It's like I can't be out of control. I must be in control. It's a story I've told myself to survive. Nurture, nature, I don't know. So I told myself a story about plant medicine that I don't need it, that it's an escape. And I really started to challenge my assumptions about it maybe 10 years ago when I got into cannabis. I've never enjoyed cannabis. I still don't enjoy cannabis, but I ended up creating a cannabis company, which is a whole long story. But I had to start challenging my assumptions about a plant. And really, like you went through your questioning process, I did my questioning around, well, wait a minute, why is a grape and a grain somehow kosher, acceptable in our society, but a plant called cannabis isn't? And I started doing research and found, you appreciate this, you're a teacher of Kabbalah among your many hats, um, that Exodus, I want to say 32:23, it's somewhere around there, talks about a plant called konebosem. And one of the commentators says this konebosem is cannabis, which is probably not a stretch, konebosem, cannabis. And it was part of the ritual process of drawing close to God. And it was that was an eye-opening moment since, my one of my hats was a rabbi. And I thought, wait a minute, maybe this plant has a deeper potential than just how I had thought of it, which is an escape. And so, that the past 10 years, I've really been rethinking my relationship with plants. I just hadn't either been presented the opportunity to formally go on a plant medicine journey where I wasn't ready. But over the past year or so, I've been opening myself to it and presented itself to me, and I'm doing it again. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man. Well, all of the wisdom traditions, in their own different way, have had plant medicine as part of their rituals.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the name of the exact plant, plants are, part of our planet, and they are a gift of God.
And not just plants, right? MEMOs or
5-MeO.
5-MeO. Bufo
DMT.
comes from a toad, right?
Right.
The original.
That's right. The original. The DMT has 5-MeO plus, some other components to it. And there's a synthetic, which is just a 5-MeO.
I wanted to do the frog thing, man. That'd be more
it's
primal.
super
But
primal.
it
Exactly.
wasn't an option. So.
When you have like the synthetic stripped down molecule version,
Yeah.
I mean, at the end, it's all from creation.
Sure.
Ultimately, synthetic or natural, it's still from this creation. Well, you said several things I want to jump on, but ultimately, like for example, people who struggle with control,
Mm-hmm.
many times they need a much larger dose
Mm-hmm.
because you don't just are so used to having so much control that just letting go, it's hard.
So one of the guys, I won't name him, I'm just calling it Bufo because it's easier. One little puff of Bufo, out, gone, it comes back, describes the face of God.
Right.
Me, the first one,
Nothing.
Second one, third one, clunk. However, I was fully conscious. I mean, the guys were all around me and they were sending love and it was really beautiful. But I was in control, and I didn't go as far as I wanted to because I just was letting go. So the other guy who did it said, because it's called the God molecule sometimes, right?
Right.
And he said, I didn't see God, but I saw where he lives. I thought that was a great answer. He said to me afterwards, did you see God? I said, I didn't even make it out the fucking front door, man. But I kicked down the door, right? And that was the starting point.
I for sure saw God with Bufo, for sure. But I see God in meditation. I see God every day in a flower all the time. But that's just kind of my blessing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I see it in anything.
I want some of that. Creation. I want that.
It's amazing. Yeah, my relationship with God is super intimate. But going back to medicine, if you have control in your system, letting go is super hard, right? So part of the plant medicine journey is preparing yourself for the journey. So there's a 3-part, the journey to the journey where you prepare, you set intentions, you kind of get ready for that.
I'm going to challenge that because that's my nature.
Challenge.
And I think, because you're a guide and I just consider it, that's where the Enneagram comes into me because I over prepared, right? Okay. I was over intending. So for somebody like me, I think it was, I wouldn't say detrimental was too strong, but it didn't enhance my experience as opposed to not preparing, having no intention, having no expectation. Maybe that's an intention, right? To set an intention of not having an intention. But I felt myself fighting where the Bufo was taking me versus where I was intending it to go.
You're missing a little very important part of this.
Clearly.
So there's a journey to the journey, intention setting and preparation.
I did all that, check.
Right. But when you do the journey, before you start, right, you manifest your intentions and you're prepared for all this. But as you take the medicine, or just before you take the medicine, you surrender. You have to surrender to any intention.
Dude, I didn't get that. I got like the first part right.
Oh, right.
The first second part, nobody said let go.
Because you've heard of set and setting, maybe.
Sure.
Okay, so mindset. So you have to be in the right mindset. And we want to get to your journey well prepared. But when it's time for the journey, you surrender to anything and everything that you've prepared for. You're already in the right
It's
mindset.
confusing though when you set an intention. I worked on it for a month,
Awesome.
right? But then to say let
You
go
surrender. Yeah.
is
Okay.
like,
That
okay, I'm letting go. I am letting go. I just want my
you
intention manifest.
surrender
Right.
to anything
I'm doing
that the medicine is going to show you.
I'm doing
Because if
any
you walk in with the intentions, you're most likely not going to see part of the wisdom of what the medicine wants to show you because you're so clear. I want to work on this. I want to work on this. But the medicine is saying, no, dude, you're going to work on
I could feel
this.
it pulling me to what I needed, not what I wanted.
Exactly. So you surrender fully. I'm okay. I'm letting go. No expectations, no intentions. I'm just going to surrender to whatever has to happen, to whatever wisdom, insight has to come my way from this experience.
Yeah.
You said it perfectly. It's what you need, not what you want.
And I could feel that when I was under or in it or whatever. It was pulling me to what I needed. Can I tell you what I experienced?
Perfect,
Yeah.
please.
So I wanted it's the God molecule, man. I want, like truth in advertising. I want to go home. And then also the other guy went before me and he described this amazing, beautiful journey of like unicorns and whatever, fairy dust. And I'm like, yeah, we're doing this, right? And then I go into it and it's like, nope, you're going over here. And I had, it's been very hard for me to cry. It doesn't come natural, never has, but it's been like a year since I really cried. And I've been telling these guys, and we're in a peer group together, and they're always kind of encouraging me to cry, and they're always crying. One of them just nonstop crying, and I can feel pulling me towards that. Right? You want to go visit God at His home, but you need to come over here and do some crying around this issue. And so I could feel it pulling me in that direction, and I ended up crying, and it was very powerful and very
Good
deep.
for you.
But I wanted more, right? And what it was telling me is, but this is what you need, not what you want. So I heard that
So
loud and clear.
that surrendering
Yeah.
is super important.
Oh, I surrendered. I was just holding on like
Awesome.
a,
But right, but if you're holding on to an intention or what I want, it's not gonna
yeah,
happen like that. And then you just kind of get blindsided by of what you actually need
totally.
to take away from this, right?
Yeah.
And as so in any of those experiences, you mentioned MDMA, you mentioned psilocybin, and you mentioned bufo. Well, not bufo, 5-MeO, right?
Mhm.
And there are three different molecules. You
Mhm.
know, MDMA molecule. Then you have there's also MDA, which is similar. Then you have the psilocybin molecule, and then you have the DMT, which is from the 5-MeO. And there are three different molecules, and they act similarly, but at the end they have a different experience.
They were all three different, radically
Very
different
different
experiences.
experiences, but at the end, what they're doing is they're just giving you perspective.
Hmm.
So there's like a few things you always get. You get perspective, and you learn to see the exact same reality from a different lens. And
Hmm.
that's just super powerful because it gives you a much more manageable approach to anything in your reality. It's like, okay, I'm seeing it from this mask, this lens,
Hmm.
and maybe seeing the exact same thing from a different angle makes it much more manageable. It's like you understand. So that's perspective. Second, insight, right? Insight and wisdom. It's like, oh, wait, maybe if I can look at it from this, if you lift the veil, it's like, oh my goodness. And then you understand all those insights. And then with those insights, you have letting go and healing. It's like you start to understand, oh my goodness, I've been carrying all this weight on this specific issue or whatever it is that, it's weighing me down.
Hmm.
And then you can actually question from a place of love, not anger. If
Yeah,
there's anger, then you need to like sit with it and be like, all right, what's up, buddy?
for sure.
What do we need to deal with? But once you get to a place of love, you're like, all right, that happened to me. But from this place of love, is it really serving me to carry it with such, uh, weight and strength and power? Or it just, you know what? It served me. I learned from it, and I'm letting this go. And you just walk out of it with a much more lighter approach.
Hmm.
And then the third part is after the journey. As you come down
Hmm.
from the journey, during that moment, you have the decompression. And when you have the decompression is when you bring those intentions that you had initially, but you already peaked. Let's say you have a peak during the medicine.
Hmm.
When you start to come down, you're like, all right, I'm still under the medicine. I'm not here, which is like, fully open, but I'm starting to come like between here and here. You're kind of in this place. Then you use that special moment for clarity. You
Mhm.
bring those intentions that you had before the journey, like, all right, I wanted to work on this, I wanted to see this. So what is that? What are the insights that I can take from that and really give it, the time and the moment to integrate, to transcend for
Mhm.
that therapeutic purpose. And then the days to follow, super important
Mhm.
integration, the
Mhm.
journey from the journey. And that's where the magic actually has to happen, the
Mhm.
integration piece. I don't know if you've done this. I'd be glad to do it with you if you want.
Mhm.
But the integration is okay, how do I take those insights that happen, during that experience and apply them
Mhm.
to my day to day life? Because ultimately, you really want to make your day to day life in this 3D realm a better day to day.
Mhm.
So, what can I take from that experience to make my day to day a better day to day? And you need to level up. Otherwise, I mean, it was just a moment in time,
Otherwise,
just an
it's an
experience.
escape, right? It's
Otherwise, it's an
just
escape, a numbing moment, and
yeah.
like, okay, you got some insights, whatever, and it was great. But if you don't bring that to a higher state of consciousness, like, okay, I'm growing, I'm, self development, self awareness, self realization. How can I use that for this?
And that's why, what you're doing is so important. And you in particular, because you're wired for this, you're called for this. But without that, it's just content. And I don't know what to do with the content. You help create the context, right? And then you help create the sort of the narrative through it and the journey through it. Because I can see the guy, I've talked to so many guys who just do the drug because that's what it is. It's not a plant medicine. It's just it's a psychedelic, and it's a one and done. And it was cool, it was fun, or it was terrible, but they're just missing such an opportunity, right? And that's where we are now. I think we have an opportunity where we are in a society with legalization, with people's willingness to challenge their assumptions about it. Like probably like you, although you're from Colombia, grew up with Nancy Reagan. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs, right? Kind of thing. The war on drugs mentality, and we're moving. I think a lot of us are moving past that. Doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
evil.
Well, what's the difference between data, content, knowledge, and wisdom? What are you going to do with that data? If it's just data there,
Hmm.
it's useless.
Hmm.
You create content, but that content, if it's not applicable or actionable, it's also useless.
Hmm.
Then you turn it into knowledge. It's like, okay, I can do all of this with this data, but only until you apply that knowledge does it truly become wisdom.
Hmm.
So you want to take the experience and turn it into wisdom.
For sure.
You see?
So one of the things I want to do is pivot Man Uprising with my partners, Dave and Cam, into synthesizing this as an opportunity to either kick off a Man Uprising peer group with a plant medicine start, or certainly to build it in the peer group journey as the retreat component, right? To come closer, to go deeper. Because I think I know every guy in a Man Uprising peer group is talking about plant medicine. It's been amazing to me. It's sort of a motif throughout all the groups because I get to listen into all of them. And I would say 80% of the guys are bringing it up. They're either doing it or they're exploring or they're interested. So we're going to talk, you and I are going to talk about how to integrate this into the Man Uprising journey.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go. Vamos. Well, you know what? You said something super important. The war on drugs, that propaganda
Mhm.
that gave psychedelics such a bad rep.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a reason for it. There was a lot of irresponsible use, not the right mindset, not the right setting.
As opposed to alcohol.
Well, there you go. Exactly. Right? Is it legal? Is it not legal? But ultimately, if you take like, that observer approach, you're like, all right, this is a tool that life has given us, that God has given us. And there is a reason for it to be. Yes, it's fun if you take it, for the visuals, sure, right?
The only thing was fun was MDMA. The rest of it was not fun. It was
Because
meaningful.
you're mature and you're taking it and approaching it in a therapeutic sense, and
People
that
think mushrooms, psilocybin's fun.
yeah,
Holy shit, it was not fun.
it depends at the stage
It
in
was
life and your
great.
purpose.
Yeah.
But right now, in the era that we live in the moment that our society lives in, this is a beautiful, awesome, powerful tool. It's like an express journey to your brain, to your soul, to your alignment, to your intention, to your awareness, to your connectivity, to the things that matter. And if you do it right, if you do it responsibly, if you do it guided, if you prepare for it, if you integrate, it's really, really powerful. And it's, I mean, there's so many studies now that have, confirmed this scientifically. But ultimately, for millennia, we've had these medicines
Yeah.
being used for, wisdom traditions, and indigenous cultures have been using that, and they're really, really powerful. But
And
you do
and it's
them
a
right.
threat. It's a threat to the system, to the man,
Uh,
to the, to big pharma, to even to like houses of worship. As a former rabbi, if somebody told me that, I'd say that's a shortcut, right? That's like quick fix, but it poses a big challenge to self-help, to all of these things that say you gotta grind, you gotta show up and, go to the church, go to the synagogue before you can meet God. All of these stipulations, like says who?
well, they're paradigms. They're social paradigms, and they've always been afraid of change, especially the leaders, right? Of course, the war on drugs was a result of the fear of having society be able to explore, to question.
Mhm.
But again, but if done right, they can offer amazing benefits, remarkable, powerful growth. Spirituality. I mean, there's religion
Mhm.
and there's spirituality. We're in a world where religion is very questionable, especially organized religion, right? In its essence, faith-based is beautiful,
Mhm.
but when it becomes so technical, it's just not maybe it's not a right fit for everyone. So having it, these tools and these medicines to be able to explore, and if done right, they just kind of really take you to a higher state of
So I
consciousness.
was a rabbi for essentially 20 years, 6 years of schooling, 14 years of congregation. I didn't pray once, not one
Wow.
fucking time. I stood up there, I put the talit, the shawl over my head, I read the words, I prayed during this plant medicine journey. Like there's no doubt about it that when we're talking about prayer, and some people can get there.
Wow.
My son can
This
get
is so
there.
powerful what you're saying. Wow.
Yeah, I'd say I'm going to get canceled, but I've already been canceled. So fuck you. Um, I I really believe that this is a disruptive agent element in our society that is so needed to shake the foundation of these institutions, these organizations that exist to exist.
Let's stir the pot.
And then they start perpetuating themselves and protect themselves. And you know, in Judaism we call a fence. You put a fence around a law. Great, you got to protect it. And then another generation puts another fence to protect the fence. And then another generation, a fence, a fence, a fence, a fence. And pretty soon people are like, what's behind the fence? I don't know. But we got
So
fences.
we lose track of the essence.
And I'm not saying all synagogues and all churches
No.
and all yoga centers and all Zen centers. No, it's never all. But I saw clearly that this is a disruptive element that's either going to force them to compete in a spiritual marketplace and check their fences, or people are just going to go to this plant.
Well, maybe I have a different perspective. I think that there's not a one size fits all solution.
That's true.
So I think organized religions are super important for a crowd. They need to be told these are the fences, this is the process, you can't go here, you can't go here, you do this is the process, these are the rules, and they need that sort of structure. Some people, pharmaceutical.
They may need it, but
Some people, it's a right, pharmaceutical medicine might be a good fit for
oh,
some
for sure.
crowd, but it's not a one size fits all. The plant medicine in the psychedelic world is not a one size fits all.
Mhm.
But if you are curious, if you're an explorer, if you are, interested in maybe it's not a shortcut, it's definitely an express route, but it's an express route to liberation, freedom, understanding, answers, and it's not for everyone,
It's
but
not.
it's a tool, and just having it available for the people who are curious about it and maybe want to do it in the right setting, in the responsible way, in a safe container, it's powerful.
I would argue it is for everybody. It's just not everybody's ready
Me
for
too.
it. Um,
But yeah,
because
okay, fair enough.
it either is or it isn't, and I believe it is. But I do believe the marketplace is speaking, they're voting with their feet, which is why you have so many empty old organizations, institutions. You got to convince people to join your thing. Like, you don't have to convince me to do this plant medicine. Now, with that being said, I can see the flip side of that. The danger of it is it's a slippery slope into, sort of a spiritual masturbation, right? You're just doing it because it feels good and you're not actually growing. And it actually becomes an escape. The very thing that liberated you can also
Beautiful.
enslave you,
Well
right?
said. Absolutely.
All it's going to get
I'm
picked up on is
very
spiritual
like I've
masturbation.
done this several times, but I'm still very intentional and very respectful. I do it very once in a while
Mhm.
because it should be done with respect, with intention, and in its right moment.
Yes.
And if you're just doing it as an escape, as numbing, well, it's the same as alcohol. It's the same as, any other drugs out there. So is it a drug to numb or a medicine to heal?
That's right.
So it depends on your intention
That's right. And the same is true with anything,
with
ultimately.
anything.
Maybe not
Absolutely.
anything, but most things. So,
Right. Like some people are just taking their opioids because, they want to numb themselves. Some people are really just kind of chemically imbalanced, so they need that kind of, to get through the day. But ultimately, this is a gift from earth and from life that we can actually use to heal and grow and move forward. And
yeah. And coming full circle, like back to somewhat where we started, my area of focus and passion is men, midlife, our age onwards, who are questioning all of those assumptions that you questioned during your dark night of the soul that turned out to be the beginning of a new type of light in your life. And the more resources we can offer him, the more sacred, profound the journey can be. And this is one, it's not the only one, but I can see this being a big part of a man's journey midlife when he is grounded. In Kabbalah, which you also know a lot about, you're traditionally not supposed to start studying Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, until you're 40. And there's 1,000 reasons, but I do believe one is because until then, you're not grounded, right? You're not rooted in a partner, in children, in work, in the world. And I think a man 40 onwards is plenty rooted, right? But now it's time to sort of explore something deeper, ask new questions, challenge assumptions. So I think that this fits right in with a man's journey at midlife.
I absolutely agree. But I also have met so many men that they're not ready and they're well into their
It's
60s or
true.
70s.
That's
I
true
mean,
too.
they have been living an ego-based life
Mm.
for all their life. They're not ready and they're not even curious. And I'm not judging. That's okay. That's a way.
Mm.
Some people are curious and they're open to it. I think in today's society, with all the era of connectivity and just exposure that we've had, plus all that kind of social construct that we live in, there is much more curiosity and for sure need for many people. I find that in this middle age for men, it's almost a must that I have to entertain and nurture this part of me inside of me that's questioning for purpose, for reason. Viktor Frankl,
Mm.
meaning. There has to be more to life than this, than just this. This human experience is this, but it's also this, and it's also this. So how do I maybe get to understand that and explore that?
So in the Torah, there's this moment when God says to Abraham, Lech Lecha, and it's the beginning of monotheism, right? It means go forth. And I was thinking about this recently, is that it's interesting. There's two words that are almost redundant. Lech means go, and it's an outward going, like just go out into the world. And he does. He makes a physical journey. And to me, this is the first half of a man's life, right? You got to go out and explore the world. You got to try it on. You got to experience it all, right? Go wide. But then you get to this point, and you're right, it's not a guarantee at 40. It's somewhere north. thereof, having enough of that lech, that life experience, to then say lecha, which is interesting because it's the same word, but it means to yourself. So it's like an outward journey, and then you make the shift into an inward journey. And that's where I do think that this is a tool, it's not the only tool, to help a man who really isn't versed in what does it mean to go inwards, right? Yeah, I can talk about meditation, I can talk about prayer, I can talk about, we can do journaling and all that. But I saw it with these other guys. It was their first time, and some of them, their first real venture into spirituality. It just gave them this insight into what it means to go inward, right? And to me, that's the second half of the journey. And that's what you and I got to figure out how to provide this to more men.
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, you yourself just said this was your first, you know, transcendent journey in this
That's true.
stage of your life. It's because it was the timing of the universe is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So it was your moment to have it at that time. And everyone is on their own path. So whenever they're ready, they will have the journey if they're ever ready. So many people will just come and go and they will live flat lives, and it's okay. No judgment there. But if you're curious, if you want to awaken, if you start to realize, oh my goodness, I've been unconscious all my life. And now I want to be conscious. I want to awake. But you can't force a path of awakening onto anyone.
You can't.
Everyone is in, and even people who are in their awakening path, they're in their moment. They're at their level. And we are all at our own level where we have to be. And it's perfect for us. But that said, what you were just saying, I'm creating right now a program which is a retreat, but it's not just the medicine experience, not just the journey and the preparation and the integration. It's a more complete, experience for those tools that you were saying, because so many of my clients, they come to me like, wow, that was amazing, that was super powerful, but we keep on going back to how do I make this complete to all of my life? Because yeah, that was special and that was a moment, but I want to incorporate with tools to really grow all of me to a next stage, not just spiritually, not just emotionally, not just mentally, not just energetically. How do I make this experience really elevate? And that's part of the work you do. I mean,
Part
it's
of the
kind
work
of
we're doing.
understanding Enneagram. It's kind of an understanding. It's a lens. It's understanding mask. It's understanding breath work. I mean, breath work is powerful in its own, and it's magic. And they're all little tools that we have to really elevate and grow day to day.
So men who are out there seeking, Man Uprising is an option. Check out manuprising.org. And Stephen Brandwayn is an option. How can people get more of you?
Well, my Instagram account, it's at stephenb.rewiring. They can send me a direct message through there, and I will be glad and eager to jump on a consultation just to, meet and see where you are.
And we're going to integrate this into the Man Uprising journey, and you're going to be one of our chief architects in it.
I'm looking forward to it.
Can't wait. Big things ahead, brother.
Thank you so much, man.
Thanks for being on the show.